I stared at the letter in my hands, reading it for the fifth time, hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less infuriating. They didn't. My name is Rowan, and my grandfather just managed to control my life from beyond the grave. $500,000, I muttered, crumpling the edge of the paper. Earned independently within 2 years, or the entire inheritance goes to charity. My mother's kitchen had never felt smaller. She stood at the counter, methodically stirring her coffee even though the cream had long since blended in. The morning light caught the gray in her hair, more prominent now than ever. "Your grandfather always did have a flair for the dramatic," she said, trying to keep her voice light. But I caught the slight tremor in it. "Did you know about this condition in his will?" She shook her head. "No, but I'm not surprised. Remember when he offered to pay for your college, but only if you majored in business?" "Yeah, and I chose art instead." I laughed bitterly. Guess he's still trying to force me onto his path. The letter felt heavy in my hands, weighted with expectations and judgment. Outside, a neighbor's wind chimes tinkled mockingly in the spring breeze. "What are you thinking?" Mom asked, finally setting down her spoon. I stood up, pacing the worn linoleum floor. "I'm thinking that I'm tired of dancing to his tune. But—" I paused, a plan already forming. "I'm also thinking about that business proposal Everett mentioned last week. The one you said was too risky? Maybe it's time to take some risks." I smoothed out the crumpled corner of the letter. "Grandpa wanted to teach me about business? Fine. I'll learn. But I'll do it my way." Mom's face softened with concern. "Rowan, honey, you don't have to prove anything." "Yes, I do." I cut her off, gentler than I meant to. Not to him. To myself. My phone buzzed, a text from Jasper asking about dinner plans. I ignored it, my mind already racing with possibilities. "I'm going to earn that money," I said, more to myself than to Mom. "And when I do, I'm going to use it exactly how Grandpa wouldn't want me to." What I didn't say was that I had no idea how I was going to pull this off. But something told me this challenge was about to change everything. The Reed family's dining room felt like a stage, and I was definitely cast in the role of the outsider. Crystal glasses clinked, silverware scraped against expensive china. And Beatrice Reed's smile didn't quite reach her eyes as she watched me from across the table. "So, Rowan," she said, dabbing her lips with a napkin, "Jasper tells me you're starting some sort of business venture?" I felt Jasper tense beside me. He'd been unusually quiet all evening, picking at his food and avoiding eye contact. "Yes, actually. I'm working with Everett Lane on expanding my custom furniture design studio." I kept my voice steady, though my hands gripped my fork a little tighter. "Everett Lane?" Harold, Jasper's father, looked up from his plate. "Isn't he the one who had that messy bankruptcy a few years back?" "That was his brother," I corrected, fighting to keep my tone neutral. "Everett's actually quite successful." "Of course, dear," Beatrice interrupted, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "It's so admirable when people try to make something of themselves. Though I've always believed that true success comes from proper foundations. Family connections, the right education." I caught the slight emphasis on proper foundations and felt my cheeks burn. Under the table, Jasper squeezed my knee, but remained silent. "Some of us prefer to build our own foundations," I replied, meeting her gaze. The silence that followed was deafening. "More wine," Harold offered awkwardly. Later that night, in Jasper's car, the tension finally broke. "You could have said something," I said, staring out the passenger window. "Anything." "Come on, Ro. You know how Mom gets. It's easier to just let her walk all over me." I turned to face him. "Is that what our future looks like? Me smiling through her backhanded comments while you pretend not to notice?" "That's not fair," he protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "Look, maybe if you told them about your grandfather's will." "No." I cut him off. "I'm not using that to prove my worth to your mother. I shouldn't have to." The streetlights cast shifting shadows across his face as he drove, highlighting the conflict in his expression. For the first time since we'd started dating, I wondered if love was enough to bridge the gap between our worlds. The email from my old college friend hit me like a punch to the gut. Attached were screenshots from a private investigator's report on me. Bank statements, employment history, even my grandfather's will. All commissioned by Beatrice Reed. I was in Everett's office when I received it, discussing our upcoming project pitch. "You okay?" Everett asked, noticing my hands shaking. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Just Beatrice Reed doing her best impression of one. I turned my phone to show him. Guess I'm not paranoid after all. Everett's usual easy smile vanished as he scrolled through the screenshots. "This is crossing a line, Rowan." The best part? I laughed bitterly. She doesn't even know about the inheritance condition yet. This is just her standard background check for potential gold diggers. My phone buzzed, Jasper calling. I sent it to voicemail. "Have you told him?" Everett asked quietly. "That his mother's investigating me like I'm some kind of criminal?"
No.
I stood up, pacing the office. But I'm about to. The drive to Jasper's apartment was a blur. He opened the door with that familiar warm smile that usually made everything better. "Not today. Your mother hired a private investigator to dig into my life," I said, pushing past him into the living room. His silence told me everything. "You knew," I whispered, turning to face him. "How long?" "Ro, it's not what you think."
How long?
He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I once found endearing.
A week.
"Mom told me at Sunday brunch. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you." "Well, what?" Letting her continue digging through my life. I told her to stop. His voice rose defensively. "She said she was just being cautious, protecting the family." "And what am I, Jasper?" The words came out sharp enough to make him flinch. "Because I thought I was going to be family." "You are. You will be. I just." He trailed off, looking lost. "Just what? Need your mother's approval first?" I headed for the door, pausing with my hand on the handle. "You know what hurts the most? Not that she did this. That you let her." I left before he could respond, my grandfather's words echoing in my head. True worth isn't inherited, it's earned. For the first time, I wondered if he'd been right all along. Everett's proposal sat on my workshop table like a ticking bomb. The contract for a major hotel chain. They wanted custom furniture for their new luxury resort. All 30 floors of it. "It's a $500,000 contract," Everett had said, his eyes bright with excitement. "But we'd need to front the materials cost. All of it." I ran my fingers over a piece of walnut I'd been saving for something special, my grandfather's deadline echoing in my head. The contract could help me meet his challenge, but one mistake would bankrupt me. My phone lit up with another missed call from Jasper, the 10th since our fight. I flipped it face down and grabbed my sander, letting the mechanical word drown out my thoughts. "You're here late." I jumped at my mother's voice. She stood in the doorway of my workshop, still in her nursing scrubs. "Just thinking," I said, switching off the sander. She picked up the contract, skimming it. "This is quite a risk," says the woman who raised me alone on a nurse's salary. That was different. Was it? I took the papers from her. "You risked everything when Dad left. Grandfather offered to help, but you refused. Because his help always came with strings attached." She touched my cheek. "Like now." The workshop felt smaller suddenly, crowded with ghosts of past decisions. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Beatrice Reed. "We should talk. Alone." Mom saw the message over my shoulder. "Whatever you decide about the contract, don't let either of them define your worth." I looked around my workshop, every piece of equipment bought with saved money, every skill learned through trial and error. My grandfather wanted to teach me about business? Maybe it was time to show him what I'd already learned. "I'm taking the contract," I said, reaching for my phone to call Everett. "But I'm doing it my way." What I didn't say was that I had no idea where I'd get the startup money. But as I watched Mom leave, her scrubs wrinkled from a double shift, I knew one thing. I was done letting other people's expectations control my life. The text from Beatrice still glowed on my screen. Maybe it was time to hear what she had to say and show her exactly who she was dealing with. The annual Reed Family Foundation charity gala buzzed with wealth and whispers. I smoothed down my secondhand dress, feeling like an imposter despite the hotel contract's success. 3 months of sleepless nights and maxed out credit cards had paid off. We delivered the first floor's furniture ahead of schedule. Quite the achievement. Beatrice's voice cut through my thoughts. She stood beside me at the bar, perfect in pearls and prejudice. Though, I wonder where a struggling artist found the capital for such an ambitious project. I have my resources, I replied, gripping my champagne flute tighter. Oh, I'm sure you do. Her smile was razor sharp. Jasper's always been generous with those he cares about. The implication hung in the air like poison. I haven't taken a penny from Jasper, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. No. She turned to face the crowd, her voice carrying just loud enough to draw attention. Then perhaps you'd care to explain the $50,000 transfer from his account last month? The surrounding conversations died. Heads turned. What transfer? My stomach dropped. Jasper appeared beside us, his face pale. Mother, don't. Show her, darling. Beatrice pulled out her phone, displaying a bank statement. I'm only trying to protect you. My hands shook as I read the document. The transfer was there, dated exactly when I'd secured my business loan. Jasper? I whispered, searching his face. Did you? I was trying to help, he said quietly. You were so stressed about the startup costs. I never asked for your help. The words exploded out of me. I never even knew about this. Because I knew you wouldn't accept it, he replied, reaching for my hand. I jerked away. So, you went behind my back? Made me look exactly like what your mother thinks I am. Beatrice's triumphant smile made something snap inside me. Years of proving myself, fighting for respect, all undone by one well-timed revelation. Rowan, please. Jasper started. But I was already moving, pushing through the crowd, my grandfather's challenge mocking me with every step. I'd tried to do this my way, to prove my worth. Instead, I'd become exactly what everyone expected, another gold digger trying to climb the social ladder. Unless I stopped at the ballroom doors, an idea forming. Maybe it was time to show them all exactly who Rowan Callahan really was. I walked back into the ballroom like a woman possessed, my heels clicking against marble with each determined step. The crowd parted, whispers following in my wake. Beatrice stood at the center, still wearing that triumphant smile. Leaving so soon, dear? She asked, voice dripping with false concern. Actually, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, I'd like to make an announcement. Jasper grabbed my arm. Rowan, don't. I shook him off, making my way to the small stage where the band had been playing. The microphone felt cold in my trembling hands. Many of you know me as Jasper Reed's girlfriend, I started, my voice echoing through the suddenly silent room. But that's not who I am. I'm Rowan Callahan, owner of Callahan Custom Furniture. And yes, my company recently landed the Morton Hotel contract. Beatrice's smile faltered. What you don't know is why I've worked so hard. I pulled out my grandfather's letter, unfolding it carefully. My grandfather left a condition in his will, earn $500,000 independently within 2 years, or his entire estate goes to charity. The whispers grew louder. I've done everything myself, without help. I faltered, looking at Jasper. Or so I thought. Turns out, I'm just as much of a fraud as Mrs. Reed always believed. Rowan. Jasper stepped forward. Let me explain. No need. I turned back to the crowd. I'm here to announce that I'm withdrawing from the hotel contract. I'll return every penny of Jasper's money, with interest. Because I'd rather fail on my own terms than succeed on someone else's. The silence was deafening. Beatrice's face had gone pale, but her eyes gleamed with victory. I hope you're all enjoying the furniture in this ballroom, I added, my voice breaking slightly. It's some of my best work, and it will be my last. I stepped down, heading for the exit. This time, no one tried to stop me. Years of work, my reputation, my relationship, all destroyed in one night. But as I pushed through the heavy doors, I realized something. For the first time since my grandfather's death, I felt truly free. Then my phone buzzed, a message from Everett that would change everything. Everett's message changed everything. The money wasn't from Jasper. Check your security cameras. I pulled up the workshop footage on my phone, hands shaking. There was Beatrice slipping into my office late one night, accessing my computer. The next day, the mysterious transfer appeared. I burst back into the ballroom, adrenaline drowning out my fear. You set me up. Beatrice turned, champagne glass freezing halfway to her lips. The crowd fell silent again. You transferred the money yourself, made it look like it came from Jasper. My voice carried across the room. Did you really think I wouldn't have security cameras in my workshop? The glass trembled in her hand. I was protecting my son. By framing him, Jasper stepped forward, his face ashen. Mother, tell me you didn't. I did what was necessary. Her composure cracked slightly. She was using you, using our name. The only person using anyone here is you. I cut in. Using your own son to destroy someone you saw as a threat.
Why?
Because I wasn't born into the right family? Or because I proved I didn't need one to succeed? Harold appeared beside his wife. Beatrice, what have you done? What you were too weak to do. She whirled on him. We were losing him to someone who what? I challenged. Who worked her way up? Who refused to be bought or controlled? Is that what really bothers you, that I didn't need your money or approval? The silence that followed was deafening. Beatrice's carefully constructed facade crumbled as she looked around the room, seeing the judgment in every face. She started, but for once had no words. Jasper moved toward me, but I held up my hand. Don't. This isn't just about tonight. It's about every time you stayed silent, every time you chose the easy path. Rowan, please. I don't need your protection, Jasper. Or your money. I turned to Beatrice. And I definitely don't need your approval. I've already won, not by playing your game, but by refusing to play it at all. As I walked out head high, I heard Jasper confronting his mother. But this time I didn't look back. Some victories aren't about revenge. They're about walking away stronger than you came in. 6 months later, I stood in my expanded workshop, running my fingers over the smooth surface of a newly finished conference table. The Morton Hotel contract had led to 3 more major projects, and my bank account now showed well over the required $500,000. Your grandfather would be proud, Everett said, leaning against the doorframe. Though maybe not for the reasons he expected. He handed me an envelope, yellowed with age. Found this while cleaning out some old files. It's addressed to you. My grandfather's handwriting was unmistakable. Inside was a letter dated just weeks before his death. Rowan, if you're reading this, you've either succeeded or failed spectacularly. Knowing you, I'm betting on the former. The money was never the point, it was about breaking the cycle. I spent my life believing wealth meant worth, watching it poison our family. You were different. You chose your own path, even when it meant walking away from my money. That's the real inheritance I wanted to pass on, the courage to define your own value. I looked up at Everett. Did you know? He shook his head, but I suspected. He talked about you differently than the others. My phone buzzed, a text from Jasper. He'd started his own foundation, separate from his family's, focusing on small business grants. We weren't together anymore, but we'd found a different kind of respect for each other. Mom appeared in the doorway, still in her nursing scrubs. Ready? I nodded, grabbing my keys. We drove to the cemetery in comfortable silence. The morning dew still clung to my grandfather's headstone as I placed a small wooden box beside it. My first attempt at woodworking. Crude but honest. You know, Mom said softly, he kept every art project you ever made him. I smiled, thinking of the letter in my pocket. Maybe we were both wrong about him, and both right. As we walked back to the car, I thought about legacy. Not the kind measured in dollar signs, but in the courage to forge your own path. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in proving others wrong, but in proving yourself right. Ready for your meeting with the Singapore investors? Mom asked. I grinned. Actually, I have some ideas of my own.